The fog arrived first. It rolled in silently from the forest, swallowing the village street by street, lamp by lamp, until even the moon seemed to vanish behind its cold, shifting veil. Adults locked their doors and whispered old prayers, because everyone in the village knew what the fog meant. Dracula was near. That night, a group of children were still outside when the bells stopped ringing. They had been playing, laughing, unaware that the world around them was changing. The fog wrapped around their legs like ghostly fingers, and the familiar road home began to feel endless, twisted, wrong. Then they heard it, slow footsteps behind them, not running, not hurried, patient. From within the fog, two red eyes appeared, steady, glowing, watching. A tall silhouette followed, unmoving except for the calm rhythm of its walk. Dracula did not rush. He never had to. He knew fear would do the work for him. The children ran. Their breath burned their lungs as they fled through the white darkness, unable to see where the road ended or where the forest began. Every turn felt like a mistake. Every shadow looked alive. And behind them, always behind them, the sound of footsteps never stopped. This was not a hunt meant to end quickly. This was a lesson, a night meant to be remembered. If any of them survived, this is the story of the fog, the chase, and the terror that followed the children long after the sun finally rose. If you enjoy dark, cinematic horror stories where fear builds slowly and nothing is what it seems, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Stay with us until the end, because what happens in the fog doesn't always stay there. Drop of blood fog. The fog arrived just before dusk, sliding between the houses like a living thing that had memorized the village by heart. It crept along fences, curled around tree trunks, and pressed against windows as if listening. By the time the church bell rang 6 times, the streets were already fading into pale nothingness. No one noticed the children at first. There were 5 of them, Elias, Mara, Tomas, Lenny, and little Jacob, finishing a game near the old stone well at the edge of the square. The adults had gone inside early, pulled by an unease they could not explain. Doors shut softly. Curtains closed. Lamps dimmed. The village withdrew from itself. Just one more round, Tomas said, trying to sound brave as the fog brushed his ankles. Mara glanced toward her house. It was only a few streets away, but it looked farther now, blurred and unreal. "We should go," she whispered. "My grandmother says the fog isn't normal." Elias laughed, though his voice came out thin. "Fog is just fog." That was when the sounds began to change. The village had always made noise at dusk. Dogs barking, pots clanging, distant voices calling children home. Now there was only the muffled hush of the fog, swallowing every sound the moment it was born. Jacob tugged at Lenny's sleeve. "I don't like it." Lenny bent down, forcing a smile. "We're going home. Right now." They turned together, but the road they expected wasn't there. The path leading toward the center of the village had vanished, replaced by a wall of fog so thick it felt solid. Elias stepped forward and waved his hand. The mist swallowed it instantly. "This isn't right," he said. Behind them, somewhere beyond the well, a single footstep echoed. Slow, heavy, deliberate. The children froze. Another step followed. Then another. Tomas swallowed hard. "Who's there?" No answer came, only the sound of breathing that was not their own. Calm, deep, unhurried. 2 red points of light flickered in the fog. Mara screamed, "Run!" Elias shouted. They scattered in blind panic, shoes slapping against stone and dirt as they fled into the white maze. The fog closed behind them, erasing their shapes, their paths, their sense of direction. Elias grabbed Jacob's hand, pulling him along as branches scratched their faces and roots tried to trip them. Behind them, the footsteps continued. Not faster, never faster. Dracula did not chase the way wolves chased. He followed the way night follows day, inevitable, patient, eternal. Mara stumbled and fell, her hands sinking into damp leaves. Lenny hauled her up, both of them sobbing as they ran again. Tomas glanced back once and wished he hadn't. The silhouette was clearer now, tall, inhumanly tall, a dark figure moving through the fog as if it parted for him alone. His coat, drifted without wind. His eyes burned like coals, fixed on the children with an attention that felt intimate, like he knew them, like he had always known them. Elias's chest burned. His legs ached. "Don't stop," he gasped to Jacob, whose small breaths came in desperate bursts. The forest opened suddenly, revealing the abandoned mill by the river. Its broken wheel loomed like a skeleton against the fog. Inside, Lenny cried. They slammed the rotting door behind them, pressing their backs against it, as if it could stop what hunted them. The mill smelled of mold and old water. Moonlight filtered weakly through cracked boards. Silence returned. For a moment, they dared to hope. Then came the voice. Elias. It was soft, gentle, spoken with care. Elias's blood turned to ice. "How does he know your name?" Mara whispered. "Elias." The voice repeated closer now. "You can't hide forever." The children clutched each other, shaking, as a shadow passed across the mill's windows. Red light bled through the cracks in the wood. Outside, the footsteps stopped. Dracula had found them, and the night was only beginning. The mill did not keep Dracula out. It only trapped the children inside with the sound of him. Elias pressed his palm over Jacob's mouth, just as the boy began to sob. Jacob's eyes were wide, glassy with terror, fixed on the thin slivers of red light leaking through the cracks in the wooden walls. Outside, the fog thickened, curling around the mill as if obeying a silent command. "Please," Jacob whimpered into Elias's hand. "I want my mother." "I know," Elias whispered back, his own voice shaking. "I know." The red glow faded slightly as Dracula moved away from the wall. The children heard slow footsteps circling the mill, each one deliberate, measured, unafraid of time. The old boards creaked in protest with every step he took, as though the building itself recognized him. Then the voice came again. "Little ones," Dracula said softly, "you're cold." Mara clamped her hands over her ears. "Don't listen," she hissed, tears streaking her dirt-smudged face. "Whatever he says, don't listen." But the voice slid into their minds like warm smoke. "I can feel your fear," Dracula continued, his tone almost kind. "Your hearts are racing. Your legs ache. You think you've been abandoned." Lenny's breath hitched. "How could he know that?" "You believe the village forgot you," he said. "But I never forget children." Tomas backed away until his shoulders hit a support beam. "He's lying," he whispered, though his voice lacked conviction. Outside, the footsteps stopped. A long pause followed. Then came a soft knock. Not a violent strike. Not a threat. A polite, patient knock, like a guest asking to be let in. Jacob screamed. The knock echoed again, stronger this time. Dust fell from the ceiling. The children clutched each other in a trembling knot at the center of the mill. "Open the door," Dracula said gently. "I will keep you safe." Elias shook his head violently. "No, no, no, no. You're the oldest," the voice said, turning suddenly sharp, intimate. "You feel responsible. You think it's your fault they're trapped." Elias's breath caught. "How do you know that?" he whispered. Dracula smiled in the darkness. "Because fear speaks loudly to those who listen." The red light flared again, brighter now, casting long, warped shadows across the mill walls. The children saw the outline of his hand against the wood, long fingers, unnaturally still. "Let me in," Dracula said, "and I swear none of you will be hurt." Mara shook her head, so hard her hair whipped across her face. "He's lying. Monsters always lie." "Monsters," Dracula repeated, amused. "Is that what they told you?" The door creaked inward an inch. Lenny screamed as Elias threw himself against it, slamming it shut again. "Don't touch it," Elias shouted. Outside, Dracula chuckled. "A brave effort," he said. "But bravery alone will not save you." The mill shuddered as something heavy brushed against its walls. Not striking, not attacking, but testing. The fog seeped through the cracks now, rolling along the floor like pale water. Tomas pointed with a trembling finger. "The fog, it's coming inside." Dracula's voice dropped to a whisper. "The fog obeys me." The children retreated toward the back of the mill, their shoes splashing through shallow puddles. The old staircase leading to the loft groaned above them. "Up there," Lenny said desperately. "We can climb." One by one, they scrambled up the ladder, Jacob nearly slipping before Elias hauled him up. They huddled in the loft, peering down to the broken boards as the fog filled the lower level. Dracula stepped inside. He did not burst through the door. He simply appeared. The fog parted around his tall, dark figure. His coat brushed the ground without touching it. His face was pale as moonlit stone, his red eyes glowing softly as they lifted toward the loft. "There you are," he said. Mara sobbed openly now. "Why us?" Dracula tilted his head, studying them as if they were precious objects. "Because you ran," he answered. "Because you felt hope." He took a single step forward, and the ladder snapped. The children screamed as it crashed to the ground below, splintered beyond repair. Elias grabbed Jacob as the others pressed back against the wall. Dracula smiled slowly. "No more running," he said. The fog thickened, and the mill fell completely silent. The silence after the ladder broke was worse than the screaming. It pressed down on the children like a weight, stealing their breath, making every small sound, every sob, every heartbeat feel loud enough to betray them. Below, Dracula stood motionless, his red eyes glowing faintly through the fog that filled the mill like a held breath. Elias wrapped his arms around Jacob, rocking him as the boy trembled uncontrollably. "It's okay," Elias whispered, though he no longer believed it himself. "I've got you." Dracula looked up at them with something that almost resembled curiosity. "You protect him well," he said calmly. "That instinct is rare. Leave us alone." Tomas shouted, his voice cracking. "We didn't do anything." Dracula's lips curved into a thin smile. "That is precisely why I came." He took another step forward, the floorboard beneath him creaking but never breaking, as if the mill itself feared him too much to resist. "You believe I hunt because I enjoy fear," Dracula continued. "You believe monsters crave screams." Mara squeezed her eyes shut. "Don't listen," she whispered to herself, over and over. "But screams," Dracula said softly, "are not what interest me." His gaze shifted, slowly, deliberately, until it rested on Elias. "I listen for something else." Elias felt his chest tighten. "What?" Dracula raised a finger, as if making a point in a lesson. "Loyalty." The fog swirled, and suddenly the air grew colder. Frost crept along the edges of the wooden beams. The children shivered. "I have watched this village for years," Dracula said. "I know which children run alone and which ones run back." Lenny gasped. "He followed us before tonight." "Yes," Dracula replied. Tonight was simply the test. He moved closer to the base of the loft, craning his head upward. His eyes locked onto Jacob, who hid his face in Elias's chest. "The smallest is the weakest," Dracula said thoughtfully. "He would not survive the night alone." "No," Elias snapped. "You're not touching him." Dracula's smile widened, revealing the faintest hint of sharp teeth. "Then you understand the choice." The words hit them like a physical blow. "What choice?" Mara whispered. Dracula spread his hands. "One of you comes down willingly." Tomas shook his head violently. "No. No way." "If no one comes," Dracula continued, unbothered, "then the fog will rise. Slowly. It will fill the loft. You will grow tired. You will fall asleep." Jacob whimpered. "I don't want to sleep." Dracula's eyes softened, just enough to be unsettling. "Sleep is peaceful," he said. "Waking afterward is optional." Lenny began to cry. "You can't make us choose." "I already have," Dracula replied. The fog below began to climb the walls, pale tendrils reaching upward like searching fingers. The air grew heavier, making each breath harder than the last. Elias's mind raced. He could feel the others looking at him, not accusing, not demanding, but hoping he would know what to do. "I'll go," Tomas blurted suddenly. Everyone turned to him. "What?" Mara cried. Tomas swallowed hard, his hands shaking. "I'm faster, stronger. Maybe I can get away." Dracula chuckled. "Bravery is admirable," he said, But lies help no one. He looked directly at Tomas. You would not make it 3 steps. Tomas's shoulders sagged. The fog reached the edge of the loft. Jacob's breathing grew shallow. Elias, I'm scared. Elias closed his eyes. Every story he'd ever heard said monsters could not be reasoned with, that evil did not bargain. But Dracula wasn't asking randomly. He wasn't guessing. He was testing them. Elias opened his eyes and met Dracula's gaze. I'll come down, he said. No. Mara screamed. Lenny grabbed his arm. Tomas shook his head, tears spilling freely now. You don't understand, Elias said, his voice steady despite the terror pounding in his chest. If I go, maybe he'll let you live. Dracula tilted his head again, studying Elias with open interest. A leader, he murmured, willing to sacrifice. The fog paused as if waiting. Dracula stepped aside, revealing the space beneath the loft. Come, he said gently. Walk down on your own. Elias hugged Jacob one last time. Stay with them, he whispered. No matter what happens, don't move. Jacob sobbed. Please don't go. Elias forced a smile. I have to. He climbed down the broken beams carefully, his legs trembling as his feet touched the floor. Dracula loomed over him, impossibly tall. Look at me, Dracula said. Elias did. The red eyes burned into him, ancient and endless. Dracula leaned close and whispered, Now let us see who survives the night. Above them, the fog continued to rise. Elias stood perfectly still. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to fight, to beg. But none of those things felt possible beneath Dracula's gaze. The vampire did not touch him. He did not need to. The power in the room bent toward him naturally, like iron filings drawn to a magnet. Above them, the children watched the broken boards of the loft, frozen in terror. Dracula circled Elias slowly, his boots making no sound against the damp wooden floor. Do you know, he said calmly, how rare it is for a child to choose others over himself? Elias swallowed. You said you wouldn't hurt them. I said I would keep them alive, Dracula corrected. Words matter. The fog continued to rise, but it no longer felt hostile. It moved gently now, like breath. Dracula stopped directly in front of Elias. Up close, his face was more terrifying, not because of rage or cruelty, but because of restraint. His expression was controlled, ancient, disciplined, a predator who did not need to rush. You believe this is about hunger, Dracula said. It is not. He raised one long finger and placed it lightly under Elias's chin, tilting his face upward. Elias flinched but did not pull away. This is about memory. Above, Jacob began to cry softly. Mara held him, whispering his name over and over, terrified that Dracula would hear. Dracula closed his eyes for a brief moment, as if listening to something only he could hear. I have taken many lives, he said quietly, but the ones that haunt the world are the ones I spared. Elias's breath trembled. What were you going to do to me? Dracula opened his eyes. I am going to take something from you, he said, and leave something behind. Before Elias could react, the fog surged, not violently, but inward, wrapping around him like cold silk. His limbs grew heavy. His thoughts slowed. Do not fight, Dracula murmured. This will hurt, less if you don't. Elias felt a sharp pressure at his neck. Brief, precise, controlled. Not pain, not exactly. More like a sudden emptiness, as though a door inside him had been opened. The world dimmed. Above, the children screamed. No! Lenny cried. Stop. Dracula lifted his head slowly. There was no blood, no struggle. Elias remained standing, supported by Dracula's grip. After a moment, Dracula stepped back. The fog withdrew. Elias collapsed to his knees. Gasping, Dracula watched him carefully, his expression unreadable. You will live, Dracula said, but you will never be the same. He turned his gaze upward to the loft. As promised, the rest of you are free. The fog retreated from the mill as if pulled by an invisible tide. The red glow in Dracula's eyes dimmed. Mara, Tomas, Lenny, and Jacob stared in disbelief. You can go, Dracula repeated. Before dawn, Tomas shouted. What about Elias? Dracula looked down at the boy kneeling on the floor, shaking, pale, alive. He stays, Dracula said. For now. The children hesitated, torn between terror and loyalty. Elias lifted his head slowly. His eyes met Jacob's. Go, Elias whispered hoarsely. Please. Jacob sobbed. I don't want to leave you. Elias forced himself to stand, though his legs barely obeyed him. You have to. I chose this. Dracula stepped back toward the shadows, already beginning to fade into them. The night is not finished, he said, but your part in it is. With shaking hands, the children climbed down and ran, out of the mill, into the thinning fog, toward the faint glow of village lights in the distance. They did not look back. When the mill was empty, Dracula turned to Elias once more. You wonder why I spared you, Dracula said. Elias nodded weakly. Because one day, Dracula continued, you will tell them what you saw, and they will not believe you. The fog wrapped around Dracula's form. And that, he said softly, is how legends survive. The mill fell silent again. Elias stood alone in the darkness, alive, but marked by a night that would never truly end. Dawn did not arrive gently. It tore the fog apart with pale, unforgiving light, revealing footprints that led nowhere, frost where no frost had been, and a mill that stood silent as a grave. When the villagers finally dared to step outside, they found 4 children at the edge of the square, muddy, shaking, alive. And missing one, Mara could not stop staring at her hands. Tomas kept looking over his shoulder. Lenny spoke only when spoken to. Jacob did not speak at all. Where's Elias? Someone demanded. The children exchanged looks, fear passing between them like a secret too heavy to carry. He stayed, Mara whispered. No one understood what that meant, but everyone understood the name they dared not say aloud. By noon, the village was convinced Dracula had returned. Search parties went to the mill. They found Elias standing outside it, barefoot in the snow, unharmed. But change. He did not blink when they called his name. He did not cry when his mother reached him. He allowed himself to be wrapped in blankets and carried home, his gaze fixed on something far beyond the rooftops. The priest came first, then the doctor, then the men with questions. Did he bite you? Did he speak to you? Did you invite him? Elias answered none of them. At night, the other children slept together in Mara's house, lanterns burning until dawn. When they closed their eyes, they saw a red light bleeding through cracks, felt fog curling around their ankles, heard a voice that knew their names. Jacob woke screaming every night. He's calling Elias. The boy sobbed. I hear him. Weeks passed. The village tried to forget. They boarded up the mill. They lit fires. They told themselves monsters belonged to stories, not forests. But the children noticed things the adults ignored. Dogs whimpered at dusk. Frost appeared on windows even in spring. And Elias stopped aging the way other children did. His wounds healed too fast. He never got sick. His shadow sometimes moved a fraction too late. And he remembered everything. One evening, as the sun bled red across the horizon, Elias finally spoke. He didn't take my blood, he said quietly. The others stared at him. He took my fear, Elias continued, and he left me with his. Tomas swallowed. What does that mean? Elias looked up, his eyes dark, reflective. It means I know when he's near. As if summoned by the words, a cold wind swept through the village. Lanterns flickered. Somewhere, far beyond the tree-line, a single raven cried out. Dracula did not return that night, but he was no longer gone. Elias began waking before dawn, standing at his window, watching the fog gather in the distance. He could feel it, an invisible thread pulling at his chest, not painful, not demanding, just present, a reminder. The villagers argued. Some wanted Elias sent away. Others whispered about burning the mill, the forest, anything that might cleanse the land. But nothing erased the truth, for children had survived the night, and one had been chosen. On the first anniversary of that night, the fog returned. It crept in silently, stopping at the edge of the square as if respecting a boundary. Elias stepped outside barefoot, his breath fogging the air. Mara grabbed his arm. "Don't go." "I'm not," Elias said calmly. "He just wants me to see." From fog, two red lights appeared, distant, watching. Dracula did not step forward. He smiled. Elias felt it rather than saw it. The fog withdrew. The night ended. From that day on, the children understood something terrible and strange. Survival had come at a cost. They were alive because Dracula allowed it, and because Elias carried the night inside him, the village would never be truly alone again. Some nights, when the wind is right, children still hear footsteps moving slowly beyond the fog, never chasing, always waiting. And Elias always knows when to look up. Years passed, but the night never truly loosened its grip on the village. The children grew, Mara tall and sharp-eyed, Tomas broad-shouldered and silent, Lenny thoughtful and distant. Jacob eventually learned to sleep through the night, though he never slept without a light. To the outside world, they became ordinary people carrying ordinary lives. Only Elias remained unchanged. At 16, he looked 14. At 20, he looked 16. Time slid over him as if it did not know how to hold him. The villagers noticed, of course. Whispers followed him through the streets. Some called him blessed. Others called him cursed. Elias did not correct them. He lived at the edge of the village, in a small house facing the forest. From his window, he could see the tree line where the fog always gathered first. He had learned its patterns, its moods. He knew when it was only mist, and when it carried something else. Dracula never appeared as he once had. He did not knock. He did not chase. He did not enter. He watched. Elias felt him in the quiet moments. When the wind paused too suddenly, when the night grew attentive, when shadows seemed to lean closer than they should. It was not fear that filled him anymore. It was recognition. On the 20th anniversary of the night at the mill, the fog came back thicker than ever before. It rolled through the forest and stopped at the same invisible boundary, just beyond the last house. The village gathered in silence. No one ran this time. They lit lanterns and stood together, adults and children alike, faces pale but resolute. For the first time, they did not pretend this was weather. Elias stepped forward. Mara grabbed his sleeve. "You don't have to." "I do," Elias said gently. "He's waited long enough." He walked alone toward the fog, lantern in hand. The cold did not bother him. It never had. Two red lights appeared, closer now than they had ever dared to come. The villagers held their breath. Dracula, Elias said. The name had not been spoken aloud in decades. The fog stirred. A tall figure emerged, not fully, not yet, but enough for the villagers to see the outline they had never forgotten. The coat, the stillness, the eyes that glowed like embers buried in snow. "You survived," Dracula said, his voice carrying easily through the night. "So, did they?" Elias replied. Dracula's gaze drifted toward the village, toward the children peeking from behind their parents' legs. "Because of you." Elias nodded. "You took something from me." "Yes, and you left something behind." Dracula inclined his head slightly. "A reminder." Elias lifted the lantern higher. "You don't need to remind us anymore." For a long moment, neither moved. Then Dracula stepped back, the fog wrapping around him like a cloak. "You have done well," he said. "They remember." "And will you come again?" Elias asked. Dracula's eyes softened, not kindly, but thoughtfully. "Not for them." The fog began to retreat, slower than ever before. "But legends," Dracula continued, his voice fading, "must be witnessed to live." The red light dimmed. The forest swallowed him whole. When the fog finally lifted, dawn followed, clean, clear, real. The village exhaled as one. Elias turned back toward them. For the first time since that night, his shadow matched his movements perfectly. In the years that followed, Elias began to change. Slowly, naturally, time claimed him at last. The fog still came sometimes, but it never crossed a boundary again. The mill collapsed into ruins. The children who survived grew old. And when parents told their children stories by firelight, they no longer spoke only of the monster. They spoke of the night children ran through the fog, of the boy who chose him over himself, and of the darkness that listened, learned, and finally let go. Because Dracula did come for the children, but some nights, survival is louder than fear, and legends remember those who dare to stand still when monsters are watching.